Welcome to Business Stories, where we explore the fascinating, bizarre, and sometimes unbelievable world of business. Today, we're diving into some of the weirdest laws in the United States that affect businesses, laws so strange they might make you question how they ever got passed. Imagine you're an entrepreneur excited to launch your dream business. You've got a great product, a solid business plan, and a burning passion. But then, bam, you get hit with a bizarre law that you never saw coming. These laws don't just sound absurd, they actually have real consequences for businesses, big and small. Let's start with a state where business owners have to watch their step. Alabama. No fake mustaches in church. Yes, you heard that right. In Alabama, there's a law that prohibits wearing a fake mustache in church if it causes laughter. Now, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with business? Well, let's say you own a costume shop in Birmingham. A customer comes in, buys a fake mustache, and wears it to church the next Sunday. If people start laughing, technically they're breaking the law. While this law is rarely enforced today, it's still on the books. More importantly, it highlights an issue that businesses often face, outdated and obscure laws that can unexpectedly trip them up. Now, let's head to California, the land of tech startups, beaches, and baked goods laws. In California, it's illegal for bakeries to sell lumpy bread. The law, which was originally designed to ensure quality control, mandates that loaves must have a uniform texture. If you're an artisanal baker who specializes in rustic, handcrafted loaves, you might unknowingly be breaking this law. Small business owners, especially those in food service, often face unintended consequences of well-meaning laws. What started as a way to ensure consistency in commercial baking has now become an obstacle for small bakeries trying to stand out in a competitive market. Next, we travel up the West Coast to Oregon, where an unusual law still affects gas stations. In most states, you can simply pull up to a gas station, hop out, and pump your own fuel. But in Oregon, until very recently, it was illegal for drivers to pump their own gas. Instead, a gas station attendant had to do it for you. The law was initially put in place for safety reasons, but over time, it became more about protecting jobs in the fueling industry. While this sounds great in theory, some businesses found it costly and inconvenient, especially in rural areas where hiring extra employees wasn't financially feasible. After decades of debate, Oregon finally loosened the law in 2023, but the cultural impact remains. Even today, some Oregonians prefer to have their gas pumped for them, while others celebrate their newfound freedom to fuel up on their own. We've only scratched the surface of the bizarre business laws in America. From fake mustaches to lumpy bread and self-service gas bans. These laws highlight a bigger issue: outdated, strange, and sometimes unnecessary laws that can trip up businesses. But we're just getting started. These laws highlight a bigger issue: outdated, strange, and sometimes unnecessary laws that can trip up businesses. But we're just getting started, where we're exploring the weirdest laws that affect businesses in the United States. In part 1, we uncovered some strange legal quirks, from fake mustaches in Alabama churches to gas station restrictions in Oregon. But if you thought those were odd, just wait, because the laws we're about to discuss are even more bizarre. If you want to sell onions in Texas, you might assume you just need a vendor's permit like any other business. But no, Texas takes it a step further. The state actually requires an onion selling license issued by the Texas Department of Agriculture. Why? Well, the law was originally put in place to prevent fraud in the onion industry. Apparently, there was once a time when unscrupulous onion dealers were selling subpar or mislabeled onions to unsuspecting buyers. To protect the integrity of Texas-grown onions, the state decided that anyone selling onions must go through a licensing process complete with fees, inspections, and official documentation. For big agricultural businesses, this is just another hoop to jump through. But for small farmers and roadside vendors, this law can be a headache. Imagine you have a small farm in Texas growing onions along with other crops. If you want to sell them at a local market, you suddenly need to navigate government paperwork just for one vegetable. It's a classic example of how overregulation can hurt small businesses more than large corporations. While the law had good intentions, it ended up creating unnecessary red tape for people just trying to make an honest living. In most states, bars and restaurants can offer happy hour discounts to attract customers. It's a great way to bring in business during slow hours. But in Minnesota, happy hour drink discounts are illegal. Yep, you can advertise a drink special for the entire day, but you can't offer a limited time discount for just a few hours. The law was put in place to discourage excessive drinking, but many business owners argue that it actually hurts bars, restaurants, and customers. Instead of getting a cheap drink for an hour or two, patrons end up paying higher prices all the time. Some businesses have found loopholes like offering discounted food instead of drinks or running all-day specials. But the law remains in place, and it's a reminder that sometimes well-intended regulations can backfire on businesses. If you're in Florida and happen to be riding an elephant, be careful where you park. There's a law stating that if you tie your elephant, alligator, or horse to a parking meter, you must pay the same fee as you would for a car. Obviously, this law is outdated, but it's still technically on the books. While no one is enforcing it today, it highlights a bigger issue: strange, unnecessary laws that never get removed. Outdated business laws can lead to confusion, extra fees, and even legal trouble for companies operating in multiple states. If a law is never formally repealed, there's always a risk that it could be randomly enforced or misinterpreted, creating problems for modern businesses. From requiring a license to sell onions to banning happy hour deals, these laws are just a few examples of how strange regulations can impact businesses in unexpected ways. But we're not done yet. In Part 3, we'll explore even more ridiculous business laws, including why one state restricts fortune tellers from opening a business and another regulates the height of sandwich bread. We've already covered some of the strangest laws that affect businesses in the U.S., from onion selling licenses in Texas to happy hour bans in Minnesota. But hold on to your seats, because in Part 3, we're diving into even weirder business laws that make you wonder who thought this was a good idea. If you've ever thought about opening a fortune-telling business, you might want to avoid Maryland, unless you have the right paperwork. In some parts of Maryland, practicing fortune-telling, astrology, or palm reading as a business is completely illegal. You read that right? Offering to predict someone's future for a fee could land you in jail. But here's where it gets even stranger. In some cities within Maryland, fortune-telling is legal, but only if you have a license. That means the government is officially regulating who can and cannot predict the future. This law has led to some hilarious legal debates over the years. In one case, a fortune teller tried to challenge the law, arguing that the government shouldn't be able to regulate supernatural abilities. The judge, however, ruled that fortune-telling is a business and businesses must follow state regulations. For those who believe in free enterprise, this law raises serious questions. Should the government regulate businesses that sell beliefs and experiences? Or should consumers be allowed to decide for themselves whether a psychic's services are worth the money? If you're a business owner in Arkansas, here's an unusual way you could accidentally break the law: by mispronouncing the name of the state. Yes, Arkansas actually has a law that forbids mispronouncing Arkansas in an official capacity. While this law is rarely enforced, it does create an unusual challenge for businesses that use wordplay in marketing. Imagine a small coffee shop opening in Little Rock called Arkansas Coffee, pronounced like Arkansas. Under the strange law, they could technically be fined for violating the official pronunciation rules. While this law may seem harmless, it highlights a bigger issue. Business owners often have to navigate unnecessary laws that serve no real purpose. Instead of helping businesses grow, these laws create potential legal headaches over things as trivial as how a word is pronounced. If you own a bakery in New York, you'd better measure your bread carefully, because state law says that pre-sliced sandwich bread must be at least half an inch thick. Why? Well, the law was originally passed to protect consumers from businesses that tried to cut costs by slicing bread too thin. The idea was that bakeries and delis shouldn't be allowed to shortchange customers by offering skimpy sandwiches. But today, this law creates a problem for small businesses. What if a bakery wants to sell thin-sliced artisan bread? What if a deli wants to offer low-carb sandwich options? They might be forced to comply with a law that was written for a completely different era. Once again, this is an example of how laws can outlive their original purpose, becoming barriers to innovation and creativity for modern businesses. We've now seen how weird and outdated laws can impact businesses in ways we'd never expect. Whether it's regulating fortune tellers, controlling how people pronounce Arkansas, or even determining the thickness of sandwich bread, these laws can create unexpected legal challenges for businesses trying to succeed. But we're not finished yet. We look at some of the most expensive fines businesses have faced due to strange laws, including a $100,000 fine over the shape of a cheese wheel. So far, we've explored some of the strangest laws that affect businesses in the U.S., from fortune-telling bans in Maryland to bread thickness regulations in New York. But today, we're taking it a step further. We'll look at real businesses that have been fined or punished because of these weird laws. Some of them losing tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars over something that seems ridiculous. If there's one thing Wisconsin is known for, it's cheese. But even in a state famous for dairy, there are some bizarre laws regulating how businesses operate. One of the strangest? In Wisconsin, cheese manufacturers must follow strict laws about the size and shape of cheese wheels. In fact, in 2019, a local cheese company was hit with a $100,000 fine because they produced a cheese wheel that didn't meet state standards. The problem? Their cheese wasn't round enough. According to Wisconsin's regulations, certain types of cheddar must be molded into specific dimensions before they can be sold under that name. Even though the cheese tasted the same, it didn't meet the legal definition of a Wisconsin cheddar wheel, so the state cracked down. For a small cheese business, a fine like that can be devastating. And this is just one example of how overly specific laws can hurt businesses for no good reason. Oklahoma, businesses must display napkins? Imagine walking into a restaurant, sitting down, and realizing there are no napkins on the table. No big deal, right? You can just ask for some. Not in Oklahoma. By law, all restaurants in Oklahoma must have napkins readily available on every table. If they don't, they can be fined by health inspectors. In 2021, a small cafe in Tulsa was fined $500 because they had their napkins at the self-serve counter instead of on each table. Even though customers could grab them easily, the business still violated the law. This is a classic example of a law that was meant to help customers but actually makes things harder for businesses. Instead of focusing on important health concerns, inspectors were busy making sure every single table had napkins even if no one needed them. You might remember the recent bans on plastic straws in some states. While these laws were created to help the environment, they've also led to huge fines for businesses that accidentally break the rules. In California, restaurants that hand out plastic straws without being asked can face fines of up to $1,000 per incident. This means that if a waiter accidentally puts a straw in a customer's drink, the restaurant could face a massive fine even if the customer wanted the straw. This law is part of a broader effort to reduce plastic waste, but some businesses argue that it puts too much pressure on employees. Imagine being a server at a busy restaurant where you're trying to remember drink orders, food allergies, and customer preferences, but one wrong move with a straw could cost the business thousands of dollars. For many small businesses, these fines feel like unfair punishments for small mistakes. Instead of encouraging businesses to be eco-friendly, it just adds another legal headache to deal with. We've now seen how weird business laws aren't just funny or inconvenient, they can actually lead to huge financial losses. From a $100,000 cheese fine in Wisconsin to $1,000 penalties for giving customers straws in California, these laws show how regulations can sometimes go too far. But we're not done yet. We'll wrap up our journey through America's weirdest business laws by looking at the most outrageous and downright silly regulations still on the books today, including why one city has a ban on eating fried chicken with a fork. We've explored some of the weirdest, most frustrating, and most expensive business laws in the U.S. But in this final part, we're going all out. We're diving into the most ridiculous regulations that somehow still exist today. Some of these laws might make you laugh. Others might make you shake your head. But they all prove one thing. Running a business in America means dealing with some truly bizarre legal hurdles. Yes, you read that right. In Gainesville, Georgia, there is a law that bans people from eating fried chicken with a fork. This law was originally created as a tourism gimmick, emphasizing Georgia's southern hospitality and fried chicken culture. But here's the crazy part, it's still technically enforceable. In 2009, a woman visiting Gainesville was actually arrested for eating fried chicken with a fork. Of course, it was just a joke. The mayor let her off the hook. But the fact that this law is still on the books shows how some laws just never go away. For restaurants in Gainesville, this law is a great marketing opportunity. Many Southern-style diners encourage customers to eat with their hands. Not because it's easier, but because it's the law. While this law is mostly harmless, it highlights a bigger issue. Some states pass strange laws that don't really serve a purpose anymore, yet they still remain technically enforceable. Let's say you own a bar in Boston and you want to liven things up. You decide to play the Star-Spangled Banner and invite your customers to dance along. Congratulations, you just broke the law. In Massachusetts, dancing to the national anthem is illegal. The law was put in place to prevent disrespect, but today, it mostly serves as a legal oddity that no one enforces. For businesses that offer live entertainment, outdated laws like this can cause confusion. What if a sports bar plays the anthem before a big game and people start celebrating? Could they technically be fined? It sounds ridiculous, but this is just another example of how old, unnecessary laws can still create legal gray areas for businesses. If you run a liquor store in Indiana, there's one very specific law you must follow. You are not allowed to sell cold beer. Yes, really. Under Indiana law, only bars, restaurants, and some grocery stores can sell chilled alcoholic beverages. Liquor stores, they're stuck selling warm beer only. This law was originally meant to limit alcohol consumption on the go, discouraging people from buying a cold beer and immediately drinking it. But in reality, it just annoys customers and makes life harder for liquor store owners. Many Indiana business owners have pushed to get this law changed, arguing that it makes no sense in the modern world. But so far, the law remains in place, forcing liquor stores to stock only room temperature beer, even if customers hate it. If you run a grocery store in Missouri, be careful what kind of margarine you sell, because in some parts of the state, selling yellow-colored margarine is illegal. This law dates back to a time when dairy farmers were fighting against margarine producers. Since butter naturally has a yellow color, dairy lobbyists pushed for a law that required margarine to be sold in an unappetizing white color, to make it less appealing than real butter. Today, margarine is widely accepted, but the law has never been fully removed. It's another example of how business laws can be created for political reasons, rather than for the benefit of consumers or business owners. From bans on eating fried chicken with a fork to restrictions on selling cold beer, these weird laws show just how strange and outdated some business regulations in the U.S. can be. Many of these laws were passed for specific reasons in the past, but today, they serve little purpose other than to confuse or inconvenience businesses. Some of them are rarely enforced, while others can still lead to big fines or legal trouble if a business isn't careful. So what's the takeaway? If you're starting a business in the U.S., it's not just taxes and permits you need to worry about. You might also have to navigate some truly ridiculous laws. That wraps up our 5-part series on weird laws that affect businesses in the U.S. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to Business Stories for more fascinating insights into the world of business, finance, and entrepreneurship. And remember, if you ever find yourself in Gainesville, Georgia, put that fork down before you eat your fried chicken.